I'm going to explain how you could double your profit in the next 90 days with systems. And I'll walk you through the entire setup from start to finish so you're familiar with everything that you would need to consider to achieve a doubling of your profit. So to start with, and one of the most important factors is you managing and tracking your projects. So we see a lot of businesses who don't really manage their projects particularly well, don't track the information relating to a particular project. They kind of just have it all sitting in an Excel spreadsheet or a Google sheet, not doing much for their organization. Now, in order to improve anything, this is just a general rule of thumb, you must track it. So as an example, if you were trying to lose weight and you didn't have a set of scales that you could weigh yourself on every single day, it would be very difficult for you to track you losing weight. So back to the business point, if you're not tracking your projects, it's going to be very difficult for you to improve the profitability of your projects, thus improving the profitability of your business. So we need to track it. I would recommend a project management tool of some description. It's entirely up to you which system you choose to use. There are lots of good options on the market, but we need somewhere where we can consolidate and put all of our projects in one place, i.e. a project management system. And the next thing that you need to consider is obviously the data points in which you're going to be tracking on those projects. So it's important to note the project type. So kind of like what service are you offering here? There'll be, I'm sure, a number of other variables as well that you would need to track associated with your particular project. Now, the reason we would want to do that is because then we can chop and change and select and look at different data points. And I'm going to come on to why that's important in a moment's time. But first and foremost, project management system, all of your projects in one place and all of the key data points relating to that particular project set up in a trackable way with data columns within that project management system. So that's the absolute basics, step one. Now, step two, we then need to track the profitability of those projects. So we need to be able to track cost associated with each project, whether that be material costs, whether that be labor costs or whatever else. And I'll come on to what that would look like in a moment's time. But we also need to track the revenue for a project as well. So typically when you're creating a new project record in your new fancy project management system, you'd be able to put the project revenue, if it's a fixed cost or whatever the case may be, however it works out, into your project management system. So you have a column that says project revenue. Then we need to track our cost. So then we need to look at, right, how is cost managed within your particular organization? Now, if you're a typical service-based business, what you're going to be looking at is obviously labor costs. You might have material costs as well. You might have some other costs you need to factor in. The key one, and often what we see people struggle with the most, is labor costs, because tracking someone's time is often a lot more difficult than tracking an invoice or a receipt that you would receive from a supplier or something else, right? So the way you would look at tracking someone's time is you would take their annual salary as the cost to the business. So your national insurance contributions, your PAYE tax contributions. If you're over in the US, I'm sure there are additional costs to you hiring an employee. So you would take the total annual cost of that employee to your business and then divide it by 2,000. Okay, so 2,000 is the average, roughly the average amount of hours worked per full-time employee per year. Now, you can be more specific. I don't know what that works out specifically to over a weekly basis, but if you know that your employees work 40 hours a week, then you need to do 40 times 52. That will give you the exact amount of hours that your team would be working across an entire year. Now, it's important for you to factor in both holidays and like sick leave and everything else, because that's still a cost to you. When they go on holiday, unfortunately, you are still paying them. So you need to make sure that you factor that in. So then once you take their total cost of the business divided by, let's just take 2,000 for the sake of this video, then you've got their effective hourly rate, which is really, really, really important, because now we can introduce a new system, which is a time tracking system, and we can connect our project management system to our time tracking system, where we can track the amount of time per employee that has been attributed to the project that they've worked on. So I can see Dave, for example, he's worked 22 hours on this particular project. And I know based on his total cost of business that his effective hourly rate is £22 an hour, for example, that means his cost to that particular project is X amount, whatever that works out to be. So you track the effective hourly rate of all of your employees based on the different costs to a business using a time tracking tool. Now, I would personally recommend looking at a platform called Clockify because I think it's a really, really useful tool. And then you can integrate your Clockify tool with your project management system. So let's just hypothetically say you're using Clockify and then you integrate with your project management system being Monday.com. Every single time a new time submission is created against a particular project, it automatically creates a new record, a time tracking record, for example, and then that cost is automatically associated with the project that they were working on. And we can obviously manage the different hourly rates by different employees. You can do that both in Clockify and or inside of Monday.com. I'd recommend doing that in both systems. So now we've got a means of tracking our projects with all of the various data points that are related to our projects. And then we have a means of tracking the cost associated with our projects. And I'll come on to why this is so important in a moment. But now every time someone does any work on a particular project, you're tracking the amount of time, thus the amount of cost associated with that project. We've already got our project revenue on our project management system. So our project revenue minus our project cost gives us the most important thing, of course, our project profit. So if you decide to do this over the next 90 days, have a project management system, have a cost tracking system, you will then see the projects that are more and or less profitable. Okay. So you can now begin to track this information. You can see, and referring back to my weight loss example, that this particular project is more profitable because we are tracking it. This particular project is less profitable because we are also tracking it. If you don't track it, you will never know. If you do not track it, you cannot improve it. Thus, you will not improve the profitability of your business. So now at a very high level, admittedly, I've explained what you would need to do to track the profitability of all of your projects in one place. And because we've got the different data points for that particular project, like the project type, let's say the customer type, for example, the customer niche, I don't know, there could be loads of different factors that you would want to consider. We can now work out which projects are more profitable, which projects are less profitable, and then we can look at why they might be less or more profitable. So you might find, as an example, that this particular project is less profitable because it's this particular project type that you offer. So you can do a number of different things when you find out this. You could either increase your pricing, you could stop offering this particular service, you could change the way this service works, you could remove things from that particular service offering, and you also might find that another service offering is way more profitable. Or you might find that working with this particular type of business is way more profitable than working with this particular type of business. So now we've got the data, we can begin to focus on what is going to make a difference to your profitability. And obviously that's the key metric for every single business. And I think a lot of people forget that. They focus a lot more on revenue than they do profitability, but that's a conversation for another day. Anyway, you can now see your profitability. Hopefully you can then chop and change the data based on what you're tracking to see which projects are more profitable and which projects are less profitable, and you find a pattern. You find a consistent theme between all of your less and or more profitable projects. And then the next thing you can do, the where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck, and why hopefully this video is so useful, or is kind of useful, is because you can then focus on not taking on not profitable projects. Now, I would say, focus on just taking more profitable projects on, but I think humans work better with inverted thinking. So if you think backwards using inverted thinking and think, what could I do to make my projects as unprofitable as possible? So I would work with this particular type of business. I would offer this particular type of service. I would do X, Y, and Z tasks. I would blah, 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 blah. Think about what you could do to make your projects as unprofitable as possible. Like, how can I absolutely tank this business? And it's really, I'm certain it'll be really easy for you to come up with a list of things that you know you could do based on now you're tracking your projects, you're tracking with the profitability, you can see based on the different data points what's working, what's not working. And then you come up with a list of all the things that don't work, and then do the complete opposite of the things that don't work. So I know if I offer this particular service at this particular price point, we will be unprofitable. Don't do that. So it's I find it personally a lot easier to think backwards. For instance, I'll ask myself, what could I do to completely ruin my business or not generate any leads, for example? The first thing I'm going to do is not post on YouTube. I'm not going to talk to anyone about anything ever. Great. Okay, so now I know that I need to post on YouTube. Now I could write an enormous list, and then I could prioritize the things based on how severe I think that particular thing would impact my business. Great example. Obviously, YouTube's going to be number one. What could I do to not grow my business? Don't post on YouTube. I think that's probably one of the biggest things. So just think like that. What could I do to not be profitable? Offer this particular service or do this particular thing for a client. And then once you've got a list of those things, obviously you know exactly what to do to destroy your profitability. Do obviously the reverse of those things, and then adjust your offering, your message, who you want to talk to cater for the people that have been most profitable. So now within a 90-day period, you've assessed your profitability across all of your different projects. You can see which ones are more profitable, which ones are less profitable, why they're more profitable, why they're less profitable. You've done some inverted thinking, so you can see what you would need to do to make your projects as unprofitable as possible. And then you do the reverse of that. And then you target the people based on your inverted thinking or the reverse of your inverted thinking, and then target those people to say that you want to help them, whether that's in your Facebook ads, YouTube videos, whatever the case may be. But that over the course of 90 days could literally double the profitability of your business when done correctly. There's so much power in tracking this information and then working backwards from what's not working. By the way, if you've got an issue within your business that you're struggling with, let's say tracking profitability or managing your projects or anything like that, and you would like us to help you fix that with systems, we would be delighted to help. There's a link in the description below this video. You can click. There's a short video that just explains how we work. Essentially, we focus very heavily on return on investment. So you give us $1, we give you $5 back. So you can submit an issue that you're having within your organization. We'll then look at that issue, and if we think we can give you a positive return on investment by solving that problem, then we will obviously, then we can have a call. We'll send you over a project scope, put a plan together, and then if you want to work with us, we'd be delighted to help. But we strictly focus on how we could solve a particular problem with systems, and only where there is a strong return on investment for the client, which could be you. So thank you ever so much for watching this video. Hopefully it's been somewhat useful, giving you an idea as to how to track your project profitability, how to increase your profitability as a business. And I'll see you soon. Thank you. Goodbye.